As much as some of us try to ignore it, the world we live in is full of sound. But while some of those sounds may be mundane or ordinary, every now and then the human ear comes into contact with something it simply cannot explain. This is All Things Creepy, and here are 5 of the creepiest sounds recorded on YouTube. Number 1. Screaming from the woods. So these sounds were recorded by Homesteading Off the Grid. A link will be provided to the original video in the description below. For timekeeping purposes, I've shortened and chopped out the screams. The original video is quite long. For some context, this is a couple that seem to do fairly mundane gardening videos on their channel, and reportedly have heard strange screaming from the woods surrounding their property. Take a listen.
Did you
Sound
hear
like
that?
it's screaming at me, yeah.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
So this is pretty spooky stuff. I've seen other videos similar to this, but they lack a lot of the authenticity. They come from Bigfoot hunters, people who are more likely to have an agenda and send someone out there to scream and make weird noises for a video. These people seem to just be doing work in their garden, uploading videos to help you with gardening tips, etc. The noise itself is, well, let's just say spooky. Almost a blood-curdling scream coming from the woods. Now, a lot of people still claim Bigfoot. I don't know why Bigfoot would necessarily scream like this. I think that's perhaps a far-fetched assumption. I'd be much more scared of the concept of a crazy, deranged lunatic screaming in the woods. And of course, we know fairly regular animals that you might not expect are able to create surprisingly human sounds. Logic and reasoning tells me that this is most likely some sort of coyote, but who knows? Maybe someone has recently escaped from the local asylum. Number 2. Voices in the mind. This next clip comes from channel Explore With Us. A link as always will be provided in the description. Whilst exploring the notorious Horton mineshaft, they detect some anomalies in the audio, especially when reaching the back of the mine. It's quite difficult to hear, you have to pay close attention. But through the dripping of water, allegedly there is the sound of voices. Listen for yourself. I'm not sure if I exactly hear voices, but I definitely hear something strange. Perhaps it is the mind playing tricks on me, considering this is such a creepy setting. Of course, the intense dripping of water is fairly common in an abandoned mine, as rainwater and surface runoff will constantly be pouring down there. But that all seems the perfect combination to disguise some ghostly voices. And if anywhere is going to be haunted, mine shafts, there were a lot of casualties back in the day. I'm not too sure myself. I'm pretty certain there's a natural explanation for these sounds. Water hitting rocks at strange angles, things like that could create all sorts of different noises resonating through the mines. But I'm definitely not planning any visits there anytime soon. Number 3. Sky quakes heard around the world. Several years back, this strange booming sound was heard in the skies pretty much all over the world, having a striking resemblance to noises from the movie War of the Worlds. People were naturally pretty terrified of the possible consequences. Could it be aliens? Perhaps an impending natural disaster? Maybe the world was simply collapsing in on itself. One thing's for certain, a lot of people were pretty terrified. And if you think worldwide phenomenon is an exaggeration, these sounds have been recorded in the Ganges, India, Japan, and North America, just to name a few locations. Is there a scientific explanation for these sounds? Well, sort of. Even several years later, we do not have any concrete physical explanation as for what these sounds are caused by, but there are some fairly solid theories. It's thought that these are possibly large-scale sonic booms caused by aircraft breaking the sound barrier in the atmosphere, also known as a coronal mass ejection. However, that does leave the question as to why there were so many in such a short space of time several years ago. They're much more few in between these days. Others suggest it could possibly be a large volume of gas being suddenly released from an underwater location, such as a Great Lake. This could coincide with earthquakes, meteor strikes to induce the release of this gas worldwide. That way, in order to hear the sound, all you have to do is be near a large body of water. But still, that's only a theory. Who really knows what causes these sounds? Some who are more conspiratorially minded suggest that perhaps the government is testing using its HAARP technology in order to change and control weather conditions, causing these massive booms. At this point, it's impossible to say for sure, and these sounds will remain one of the strangest phenomena recorded en masse. Number 4. The repeater. The YouTube channel Matty Ann is what you might consider a smaller channel with less exposure. In most of their videos, they seem to believe some kind of unnatural creature is stalking them, causing them discomfort. And in several of the videos, they record images and clips of this eerie behavior. However, the clip that I'm going to be including in this video, and what I think is the most startling piece of evidence they have, is the repeater. Allegedly, a creature that is hiding in their garden repeats and mimics what they say. Here's the clip.
I'm hearing something talk in my voice. I'm gonna call out to it, and I'm gonna turn the camera around. Hello? Oh, fuck.
As you can tell, that is pretty spooky stuff, and if it is indeed real, I'm sure they're quite terrified. And to almost add some legitimacy to this, they moved house shortly after recording that video to try and evade whatever it is they think is stalking them. This one's difficult to determine as they seem quite authentic in their delivery, especially the part where they claim to have moved house. However, of course, there is the possibility that they're just living their lives normally and moving house as regular people do, and just tying that in with the paranormal activity to get clicks and views on YouTube. It's possible, but if that is what they're doing, I have to take my hat off to them because they come across quite authentic. As for the sounds themselves, it is definitely a mirror replica of the woman's voice.
Hello?
So much so that it steps into eerie territory, as it would be difficult for a human hiding in the bushes, or maybe even a genuine normal stalker, to recreate her voice and the tones of her voice in such a precise manner. Therefore, the only rational explanation I can come up with is that they are perhaps faking it. And of course, with some imagination, it's not difficult to pull this off. You set up a microphone in your garden, present a live stream, and the delay that that live stream causes would have this repeating effect. The issue with that, of course, is how authentic and genuine they seem. I don't think we'll really know the answer unless they at some point come forward and say that it's a hoax. Until then, we will never know. Maybe there is something strange lurking out there, mimicking human behavior. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And tell me if you'd like to see a more in-depth follow-up and analysis of this channel. I find it quite interesting. Number 5. Apocalyptic sounds in Norway. So this clip was recorded in 2017 over the skies of Norway. Take a listen. A quite eerie sound, to say the least. I hear shades of Silent Hill and maybe even World War II bombing sirens. This is a sound that is quite terrifying, but maybe not so much if you are actually a resident of Norway. You see, this is the standard issue bomb alarm sound that Norway tests every year. And I included this clip for a very specific reason. Yes, this is a particularly creepy and scary sound, but there is a very reasonable, logical explanation to it. If you weren't from Norway, if you didn't have any contact with someone from Norway, you would have no idea what this sound is. As a bonus, I'd also like to add this eerie, ominous doomsday siren heard over Chicago. Take a listen for yourself. Several years ago, this was heard over Chicago during a very intense storm, and the noise itself is pretty terrifying and led many to believe that doomsday was approaching. However, once again, there is a rational explanation to this. A tornado was approaching, and whilst very disastrous and catastrophic, it's not quite doomsday. And the reason for the awful sound of this siren is the fact that tornadoes aren't all that common, and servicing of these sirens also isn't very common. So therefore there are a few malfunctions. The sound isn't quite as crisp as perhaps a more regularly used alarm, and the result is something straight out of Silent Hill. So there you go, once again something easily explained as a dodgy alarm system that, if heard out of context, could cause a lot of uproar and despair. And I think the message there is important. Although something sounds scary and strange, what really scares us as human beings is the unknown. So if you ever hear an eerie sound that you simply cannot explain, stay calm and don't freak out, because there's most likely a fairly simple explanation. As always, thank you all for listening. Like the video if you did, share it with a friend, and of course, if you haven't already, subscribe for more creepy content.